Hey, I saw this post on the Realtime VFX forums about this user wanting to unwrap this disk into multiple strips with as less distortion as possible in order for the user to be able to get some text on those individual strips. So that's what I'm going to be showing you how to do in this quick lesson. Let me just open up Blender and I'll be creating a cylinder just like that. The cylinder will have 32 vertices and the cap fill will be nothing. And then I'll be selecting that right there, moving it up 1 unit so it's on the floor level. And then from the top view, I'm going to be scaling that so like around there. .1 could be okay. Selecting that one, bringing that down, and then I'll go to the top view again and create 3 loops right there. Now you'll see that the user has some red lines going on there. Those are like the seams of the UVs that are marked there. I'm going to be creating those, but first let me create a UV editor window right here, and I'll activate the UV sync selection. So with the item I've got right there on the screen right now, I'll be able to select some of those faces or edges, and those will display right there. So if I now access that one, you'll see that this is corresponding to this line right here. So I can start by selecting this one, pressing Ctrl E, mark seam, and then I'll be selecting the other loops like that, and pressing Ctrl E, mark seam, and now all of those have a seam like the reference, except that this one in the middle doesn't have that on the example from the post. So I just added that for the next step, which is unwrapping this. So I'm selecting everything, pressing U. Now you can try unwrapping this with minimum stretch, for example, which could be okay. So now what I'll do is selecting this one right here, for example, or maybe even better, one of those ones, which are the ones at the edges. And what I'll do pretty quickly is select that edge right there, press S, Y, 0 to scale it horizontally as a flat line right there. Do the same for this one right here. And now for those ones, I'm going to be doing the same but vertically by SX0. So right now this one is a square, right? Now I can quickly select all of this one by pressing the L key. And then what I'm going to do is press the U key. And then I'm going to be using follow active quads with even length or length average. Well, length average is the one that's most useful in this case. So now you'll see that this has turned into a strip like that, pretty straight strip. Now I'll do the same for all the other ones. So I'm repeating the process by individually selecting those and just doing this once on the one that's on the edge right there, pressing L to select everything, U, follow active quads, length average, same one here, scale it like that, L, U, follow length average. And you'll see that sometimes when you're scaling those, you'll get weird results because the UVs are rotated weirdly. So don't worry about that. Just do the exact same thing and it will be okay in the end because yeah, you can see that it's nicely placed right now. All right, so now what I'll do is activate the UV constraint to image bounds right there. And I'll see that those at the top are the ones that are corresponding to that strip right there. If that's not the case, if those are inverted, I'm going to be selecting those and rotating that 180 degrees. So those ones at the top are the ones right there on that loop right here. And now you'll see that since we've activated the constraint to image bounds, the UV won't be able to escape that square right there. If I deactivate it, I'm going to be able to move it, but just activate that one. And then I'm going to be using the 2D cursor to scale. So I'm going to be scaling as far as possible on the vertical axis and as far as possible on the horizontal axis like that. And I'm going to be repeating that for all the different strips that we've got right here. And you'll see why at the end, right? Scaling that up, scaling that horizontally, and again, scaling that up and scaling that horizontally. All right, so now all of those strips right there have the same UV space assigned to them, which is the whole UV thing. So I just created this checker texture material to check how those UVs are being represented right now. But as you can see, they are stretched weirdly because the spaces are not the same, are not even between all of those. And yeah, that's completely normal to be displayed like that. Let's adjust the different UVs. As you can see, we've got 4 different rows, and that means dividing the totality of this space by 4. I'll start by selecting all of the UVs and scaling them by x0.25, which will turn them into a quarter of the space of the total UV space. So I'm going to be selecting this one. Now I'm going to be disabling the constraint to image bounds, rotating this like that, so 90 degrees. And I'm going to be enabling constraint to image bounds again, moving that a bit to reposition that. and move that all the way up. Then I'm gonna be going row by row, selecting those like that by pressing Alt and selecting right there. That one is the first one, so it's okay to be on the topmost part of it. And now this one, I'm gonna be moving it like so. It will be moved minus 0.25 units. So it's moving 1/4 down. Now for this one, should be moved minus 0.5 on the Y. And as far as the last one goes, it should be moved minus 0.75. So it's on the bottommost part of it. Great. So now instead of displaying this checkered texture, I'm going to be creating a sample text type of texture. So now in Photoshop, I'm going to be creating the texture by going to View, Guides, New Guide Layout, and selecting it so it's 1 column and 4 rows instead of 3. And then I've got the same subdivisions right here. Just gonna be creating some weird text. So yeah, some lorem ipsum doloret shit amet. So I just set up some random text and I'm gonna be using that one in Blender. So the first thing that you'll notice is that those are in reverse actually. So now I'll switch this to be the medium point, scale Y by -1 to invert them vertically. And so now all of those will be set properly in the vertical axis, like so. All right, and so now as you can see, the text in the centermost row right there is not as distorted. It's still somewhat distorted, right? But the ones at the outermost edges are really, really distorted. So that's due to the fact of like you're covering more surface with that, and the relative vertical and horizontal space is different for each one of those rings, right? So you need to take that into account when you're trying to create the actual textures for it. As a quick solution, you might want to scale the X amount, so maybe by 2. So you could have that repeating 2 times around, but as you can see, the letters are still somewhat distorted. So yeah, it's just a matter of playing around up until you find place where that could fit into your desires as far as the textures go. Maybe you could also, instead of doing that on the UVs, you could do that here in your texture editing software, but you're going to run into texel type of issues in which you're trying to stretch those pixels across a different sized surface around. So it's going to be distorted no matter what. So yeah, it's going to be something that you'll need to tweak here and there. So now it's just a matter of deciding what you want to do with this. If this is just a rune that's going to be repeated, so magical runes that are going to be shown right there, and maybe you want to display those like that on the engine, so they are moving this way, and this other row is moving that other way, or maybe vertically like that. So it kind of depends on what you want to do on the game and in the shaders and whatnot. But now it's up to you on how you decide to approach this. As you can see right now here, we are using the UVs to repeat the texture, so the texture is wrapping, right? So we are seeing the same text multiple times. But if you set the texture to be clamped instead, you would be getting just one of those texts. And so you'll be seeing that same text moving across that geometry on your game, but you'll only see the text once. I don't know if that's maybe the case, but yeah, again, there's not a universal way to just have one single text that's wrapped around different sized rings and it's not going to be stretched, because that's geometrically not possible, right? So, I mean, I guess you could create like some text generator that does that, so it automatically stretches the fonts and the sizes, and it's using vectors instead of images. But as this is the case that you are presenting on the post, that's the results that we are going to be getting with this approach. So yeah, right now it's completely up to you on how to handle this. Maybe this one could be tiling 3 times. Maybe this one could be tiling 2 times, and that's okay. Maybe, well, that's even worse. And you're getting some stretching happening here and there. That's just because like there's a triangle, an invisible triangle right now going there. So you need more subdivisions between those. So in the end, what I suggest that you do is create a couple extra edges right here. So you'll start to see that if you do that, you'll get more definition, and the deforming is also switching. But yeah, you're adding just some extra geo there, which might not be ideal. So maybe just adding 1 could help with the deforming right there at the center, maybe 2 at maximum. But yeah, it's completely up to you right now. This lesson will be included in the upcoming course Blender Quickstart for VFX Artists, which is a course where I'm teaching you useful Blender for real-time VFX as a beginner, where you'll get to know the most used procedures on how to approach creating a multitude of different contexts for real-time VFX, so you know how to approach those on your own and at least get a starting point on how to tackle those and why and how you should be using one approach or the other. We're going to be modeling game-ready props and assets to use for maybe debris and other sort of use cases. We're going to be learning about meshes, UVs. We're going to be learning about simulations, fluid simulations, smoke simulations, rendering those, exporting those into Unity and Unreal. And so, yeah, that's going to be a really fun course. Go ahead and check it out if you haven't, right there on clevender.com. All right, I hope that has been useful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and see you in the next one. Bye.